Good evening, afternoon, night, morning. When finally we watch or listen to this podcast, it is me, Omar the Burger Popper, back again with another off-season episode. I mean, these off-season topics keep coming, but I guess I'm just glad to have people able to talk with me about just any random stuff in the college football off-season. It's kind of interesting too because now we're at a high tide in the off-season conference realignment and conference schedule release is happening. Especially like the big news yesterday with UMass joining a conference, which I'm sure a lot of college football is happy about that. I mean, it's just good to see the Minutemen in a conference. But joining me today, I have a new guest. I have Josh Keatley, a writer for he writes about the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm sorry, the name of the site escapes me, which is why you're here to provide your introduction and provide your plug for your site. But Josh, thanks for taking the time in the Eastern time zone. It's 9 o'clock right now. It's 7 o'clock here, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, I write for Buckeyes Wire. It's good. It's good reading if you're on the toilet, just scrolling through. So, you know, part of that USA Today network. It's a good time. You see, every now and again I write something meaningful, like a scouting report on a recruit every now and again. And I'm the local alternative football guy. So when KJ Hill got picked up by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, I was all over that. But yeah, Buckeyes Wire, so you can find most of my work.
Yeah, see, I thought it was Buckeyes Why, but I don't want to say the wrong site and promote someone else instead of you. I didn't
No
want that to
problem,
happen.
man. No
But
problem.
But yeah, like I mean, shoot, alternative football is coming soon. I mean, I think the indoor football league kicks off first. I think I'm a big
Yes.
IFL guy. I know the AFL is coming back, but it's just a great time. It's football every year, but it's just weird because we have these Saturdays now, like the three or so Saturdays. That's just kind of awkward. There's just nothing happening, like period.
Well, I used to get the Columbus Destroyers. I used to get season tickets when they were here. When they came back for their reiteration with Fabian Guerre. I'm sure you're familiar with his game if you're an IFL guy, USFL guy. But it was always a good time. The tickets were like $10. You go in there, and if you're like me, you spent the majority of college and pro season writing and grinding, and it's fun to watch those games, but it's more or less a job. But arena football, when you go to an arena football game, you're just there, dude. It's just fun. You're there, just laid back, eating the main, grab a hot dog and chill. So it's always a good time. I'm with you, man. I like that stuff. You throw down some cash on some USFL or CFL games. Or I guess it's the UFL this year, but yeah, I'm right there with you. I enjoy the alternative football scene.
Yeah, exactly. IFL too. Duke City Gladiators, always a fun time. I mean, yeah, my family loves going to those games. It's like 10 minutes away from my mom's house and everything whenever I visit. But yeah, like shoot, we can talk all day about alternative football, but not the reason we're here. I had to ask a resident Big Ten expert on this, and more importantly, an Ohio State expert for this topic. 'Cause as you know, if you watch or listen to this podcast or read my writing for Redshirt Sports. I'm a Group of Five and FCS guy. Power Five, not exactly my forte, or I guess my focus. I should say focus because I can talk about the Power Five. But last week, I guess the big news last week was with Northwestern. The not only the announcement of a couple games, or I guess the leaking of a couple game sites this year since Ryan Field will be renovated over the next 2 seasons, but the I guess the Wildcat report I think on Rivals released that Ohio State would play Northwestern on November 16th at Wrigley Field. And of course, I was surprised. I mean, anyone that has any I guess concept of financial literacy was surprised with this because Wrigley Field only holds 37,000. Soldier Field on the other hand, while the smallest stadium in the NFL holds over 60,000. So really confusing, but as far as it looks like logistical issues forced Northwestern. I guess forced is just like a strong word because you're playing at Wrigley Field for goodness sake. Forced Northwestern to host Ohio State. So I wanted to know your thoughts, Josh, as an Ohio State fan. Um, do you like playing at Wrigley? Are you excited, or is this whole situation just kind of bush league?
No, you're always it's exciting because Wrigley Field is such an iconic ballpark. I mean, I see you wearing the Cubs jersey, and I went to Valparaiso, which is in about an hour east of Chicago. Those, you know, I'm not a big baseball guy, but it's just Wrigleyville's such a cool area. It feels like it's such a part of history. So I feel like it'll be really cool to see a football game live from such an odd experience. I kind of always like that. That's the I know I heard you say you were a neutral site guy in one of your podcasts, and I'm kind of the same way where it's like I don't like I'm never gonna vote for a neutral site game, but if it happens, I'm never gonna poo poo on it. When the Browns played the shoe for one of their summer practices, I was all over it just because I thought it would be so weird to see the Browns in the shoe. So I think that there's definitely excitement about it. I'm not excited about the parking situation. I'm not excited about the logistics of all the people. Ohio State fans travel very well. That's why there's a lot of bias towards Ohio State. They get that Buckeye bump, right? Everybody wants that. Everybody wants that fan base money, and so in such a small area like that, I don't know what's going to happen. I guess your better option is to be parking far away and take the L train or whatever down there, but that's going to be a logistical nightmare. But Northwestern was kind of a nightmare too, man. That stadium was real small. It was not a Big Ten stadium. I think you kind of nailed it on the head when you said it was kind of reminds you of like an Ivy League stadium. I don't know if I would. It's not. I know you didn't mean it as an insult, but I don't know if I would classify as an Ivy League stadium. But it's definitely doesn't. You got the big house, and you got the shoe, and then you got Happy Valley, and then you got Ryan Field. One thing is not like the other, dude. And it wasn't just that it was small; it was that it was so awkward. It's a pain to get in, it's a pain to get out. Just I feel like there's nothing. It's not a fun time. So Wrigleyville can't be any worse than that. I don't know why they're not playing it in Soldier Field. I don't know what the logistics are in regard to that, but I do feel like this is probably a more happy medium for Northwestern. Last time they were forced in a similar situation, they played Ohio State in Cleveland Stadium, and that really sucked for them. I think they lost like 35-0. The stadium was filled with nothing but Ohio State fans. I mean, this is kind of before my time. This is back when I was a baby, but you go back and watch the games and all that. The recollections from people that were there are just all Ohio State fans. So I feel like this is probably better than that. It's definitely going to be better than playing. They're playing Wisconsin and Green Bay, so it's going to be better that than that. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to bode well for Northwestern at all. So this at least provides some kind of home field advantage. I think that the new stadium is going to be great. I just feel like it's coming at a really bad time for Northwestern, if that makes sense. I feel like the program is kind of recovering. Um, whether you believe Pat Fitzgerald deserved to be fired or not, you can't debate that he had the program in kind of a solid area. And Braun came in and did a very admirable job. He was up for multiple Coach of the Year awards. Um, and I think that this might smash a lot of the goodwill and momentum that he had in a crucial growing point of the Big Ten. So I feel bad for Northwestern fans, but as an Ohio State fan, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I guess the only negative is that Ohio State is perennially injured all the time. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Travion Henderson, I mean, Nick Bosa, Chase, I mean, you name it. Their star players are always getting hurt, dude. So when you hear about a football game on a baseball field, you immediately go, oh no, what could go wrong? But that's overreacted just from a pure fan standpoint.
Yeah, and I mean, I was gonna have a question about that, but you nailed it on the head. I guess your concerns about injuries with because with the sod being laid over the diamond, it's always a concern, especially in late November, not late, sorry, mid-November at Wrigley. It is a concern, and I remember like a couple years ago watching the Purdue Northwestern game at Wrigley. There was an accidental onside kick because the kicker slipped on some replay sod and just the ball deflected off a Northwestern player. So it was, I mean, it is an issue, and especially with the grind of the 12 team playoff, like it's just crazy that something as little as an injury caused. I guess it's just like insane butterfly effect. Something as little as injury caused at Wrigley Field because Northwestern wanted to renovate their stadium
Yeah,
because of poor planning where they knew about this since 2021. They knew about
I
this
know,
since
right?
2021.
Yeah,
Um, and then now they're being forced in the situation. It's just ridiculous. But I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head about. I mean, I love neutral site football. Even more, I love ballpark football. As a Army fan my whole life and as Army grad, like I, I I'm sure like the only thing I talk about, like I guess the thing I talk about the most lately is Army Notre Dame 2024, this year, with Yankee Stadium and everything. So I love ballpark football. I love this. It just seems a bit funny to see Ohio State playing in a 37,000 seat stadium because of just
yeah,
the command that they have, the brand that they are. Like for instance, like I mean, I think about too like the Navy game, the home and home with Navy, how that game was placed at Baltimore in the Ravens
yeah.
Stadium. Which I mean, it's crazy to to think that Navy led the eventual national champions at halftime. I think either they led at halftime or like only down by
Right.
3.
Yeah.
So that yeah, that those are good times for the program.
I believe that was
Yeah.
JT Barrett's first start, right?
Yes, yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, because it was right. There was Braxton Miller got hurt, JT Barrett got the start, and everybody was like, "This is it. They're not going to win any games." And then they have turned around just in time. Next week was I think that because they lost the net, they lost the next week to Virginia Tech, so the season
Right.
started out rough. But yeah,
That's
they've had numerous football games at Wrigley Field. Someone that is much more intelligent about the injury aspect than I reached out to me because I think I even tweeted something like, "Oh, what's going to happen with the injuries?" And they said, "Josh, that's silly." Like they kind of went through all the games that have happened at Wrigley the last couple of years because there's been quite a few in the last decade. And there's been no serious injuries as far as non-contact goes. Obviously, if you get a concussion, that's not the field's fault, right? But if you look at, this guy tearing his ACL or doing that or doing this, those things are pretty easy to find. And that is, I can admit that's an overreaction. It's not going to go away. I mean, he made me not say it as much in public, but the fear is still in the back of my mind, right? So, but that's coming from an Ohio State fan who there's always a serious injury every single year. So,
Yeah, I mean, it is fair to be concerned about that too, like you say, with the major injuries happening so frequently. I guess to shift gears a little bit, I guess would you prefer to have this game at Soldier Field?
I think I would have just because it would have been. I think it would have been easier as someone who has to that goes to these games, and I think it's obviously a football field, right? So I think I would have preferred it at Soldier Field. Now, with that said, there is an excitement of like, oh man, I get to go to like Wrigley Field's just a cool place, man. I mean, it just is. It's just kind of, it's got a flair to it. Like you talked about, the game in Army State or Yankee Stadium. It's just those baseball stadiums are just older. They're more classic. There's just more love there. And Soldier Field's a cool place. I'm not bashing on it, but it looks like a spaceship now, and that love is not as it's not as abundant. It would have been very cool, but it's just not. So Wrigley, it's the selfish person sitting in the stands. Yes, Wrigley Field is way cooler. But as speaking from a pure football standpoint and logistical, like, hey, what do the players probably want? What's probably better for the team? Soldier Field is probably the better outcome. But it is what it is. Either way, Ohio State fans are going to pack. Either way, Northwestern team's going to have it worse with the fans and the logistics for their side because it's not going to be a home game. It's just not.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I agree both ways. Like, I mean, I can see the argument for Soldier Field and everything with it being better from a revenue standpoint, from a logistical
Yeah,
standpoint, with it being a football stadium and everything. But I mean, yeah, Wrigley Field, it's just cool. I mean, like I'm
it
not
is
even a
cool.
Cubs fan, but it's like stepping into it's just stepping into a time machine, honestly.
Yeah,
I was at that Northwestern Purdue game, bucket list game for sure, and it was just amazing. Honestly, it's like heaven. I can't even think of a better way to put it. Probably is a better way to put it, but I can't think of it right now. Wrigley Field football. But I guess with like I know you mentioned like Lambeau Field and everything. Would you prefer to be the Lambeau game instead of Wisconsin? I guess so Northwestern could have some semblance of a
yeah.
dignity. I guess.
Oh yeah, no. If I'm Northwestern, I don't know. I don't know why they didn't play them at Wrigley or Soldier as well. But I'm not intelligent enough to understand the financial expectation there, what was going on. But yeah, you don't want to play Madison. That's an automatic L. I mean, because you can't. I mean, at least if you're playing it, if you play it in Green Bay, there's a little bit you can kind of control the ticket allotment. I feel like you can have a little bit more control over it. You're still going to be outnumbered, but you play it in Madison, no man, because part of that's the atmosphere that surrounds that area too. Yeah, man, you don't want no part of that. Wisconsin's pretty. That's a pretty nasty area. That's pretty. I mean, I've been to a couple of Wisconsin games. It gets pretty rowdy up in there. So I would much rather. I think Lambeau is probably the better. If you're a Northwestern fan, you should be thankful you're playing in Lambeau. I think.
I would agree. So I guess to kind of like I guess bring things back to the past. So 2009, Ohio State plays Toledo at Cleveland.
Mhm.
Um, Do you think that Ohio State could have had the bargaining power to move this Northwestern game to Cleveland like that Northwestern game in 91 that you're talking about, and like that Toledo game in 2009? And were Ohio State fans, I guess if you have any recollection, like were Ohio State fans, I guess, thrilled to play at the Brown Stadium, or was it just kind of like a formality?
Formality. I think that when they look at it, I think if they understand that, like, hey, this is an away game, so this is the best away game we can get, right? But yeah, it's not something, it is what it is. They did the same thing. I think it was the national championship year when they played Cincinnati at Paul Brown Stadium instead of Nipper. So it's not an uncommon thing. Ohio State fans are pretty used to it. We kind of know what the deal is. I don't the bargain. I think Ohio State probably did. Why they didn't push through it, I don't know. I the part that makes it confusing, because a part of me thinks that Northwestern wanted to have some games. Wrigleyville gives you the illusion that it's a home game, right? You are going to get some Northwestern people to go there, because they're in Chicago. That's where their fan base is. But so that was my thought. Like, well, that's why they want to play in Cleveland this year, because they have a plan. They're going to try to keep these games in Chicago and that Chicagoland area, yada yada yada. But then you hear that they're going to play in Lambeau with Wisconsin. You're like, well, clearly they don't care, right? Because that's a death sentence. Why wouldn't they want to play in Cleveland instead? But I don't know. So I don't really know what the thought process was there. I definitely think that if Ohio State wanted to be like, no, we're not playing in Wrigleyville. I mean, who's going to say no? I mean, we went over giant lists as to why it doesn't make sense. So I think that Ohio State probably could have done it. Like I said, parking, the attendance is lower. It's a baseball field, so I think that Ohio State definitely could have flexed their muscle and be like, "Nah, dude, we're going to Cleveland." But why they didn't, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think Northwestern. I mean, it's already a bad look that they're playing in Lambeau for one of their games, and I guess reading the
That's
article, like reading the article, it's like I think their old athletic director, who I guess worked for the Packers or works for the Packers currently, he had like a deal with them to have a game in 2024 and 2025 at Lambeau, and it's just like it's some favor, I guess like they get to play a de facto road game and whatnot. So I guess like doing that twice, kind of it's definitely a really poor look for Northwestern. So
yeah,
I
I
can
think so.
understand. But I guess like Ohio State, like, money talks, I mean, why they didn't cut a check to Northwestern to do that, I don't know, because we've seen other Big Ten schools like do that. I mean, I can think of Penn State and Indiana in like I think '09 or 2010, where like Indiana played a home game in Washington, D.C. against Penn State, and it's like, we, we
Yeah,
we know what's going on. I mean,
yeah.
so
Well, yeah, I also wonder if it I also wonder how much, say, a TV network maybe have gotten involved. I'm sure that will come out as we get closer to the football season. But when I think it was Penn State, Michigan State played in
it's
Detroit. I mean, NBC was the driving force behind that, or maybe it was Fox Camera. But it was very clear, and it came out that a TV station was very, very behind pushing that to be an indoor game in Detroit. So maybe we're going to hear maybe that. Maybe some of these TV stations or TV networks had a little push behind it. That would fill in a lot of the gaps for me, as far as why they made the decisions that they made. But like you said, they've been completely unorganized. This whole Ryan Field renovation has not been news. This has been going on for a while. They knew it was coming. The fact that they don't have a plan, and you are in the Big Ten. The Big Ten has been in flux. There's other teams coming in. They're kind of it's kind of a bad look for what should be a major program. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd hate to use a term that's floating around, but a power two program or a big two
Yeah.
program, it is a really bad look. So I guess you mentioned television and something I wanted to ask. So, 2021's game for Northwestern Purdue at Wrigley Field, Big Ten Network this past year, even though it was an instant classic, Iowa Northwestern, and there was a Big Ten conference implications on the line at that point. And Iowa hit if you're a baseball historian, you have the homer in the Gloman, Gabby Hartnett, 1938. They kicked the field goal in the Gloman, as Wrigley Field becoming darker. Do you think that Ohio State Northwestern will be either big noon kickoff um or I guess a CBS 3:30 kickoff, or do you think it's just destined for Peacock at this point?
God, I was thinking Peacock, man. that was my initial reaction. You kind of made me feel bad for thinking that, like, oh man, maybe there's more historical implications behind this, and it's kind of cool. Maybe they'll put it on. But I don't think that they want to have Ohio State on a major network with 30,000 people in the stands either. Anyways, I feel like there's just a lot of factors. I mean, yeah, man, I don't know. I don't think Northwestern's going to be very good this year either. I think that they kind of
Hmm.
had that dead cat bounce a little bit after the firing of Pat Fitzgerald, and things kind of broke their way. Um, I just feel like it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna be a super appealing game to watch. Plus, if Ohio State is half as good as everybody expects them to be, they should be just. I mean, the spread is going to be 30 points, right? So that was kind of my thought process. But again, I could be wrong. Northwestern's a weird, weird, weird program. Maybe they come out guns ablaze, and maybe Braun is the real deal as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I as much as I hate to say it, as I love seeing games like these being showcased to the country and whatnot, I just don't think people care as much, I guess, about,
No,
ballpark games. I guess like thinking about the record-setting performance that shoot, what's that tight end's name? Dan Villari put out at Yankee Stadium with I guess the most rushing yards by a tight end in ACC history at Yankee Stadium. That game was an ACC Network special, even though it was at Yankee Stadium, and it actually was the centennial of the first football game at Old Yankee Stadium.
was that
I
on
guess
ACC Network?
that was on ACC Network.
Oh wow! For some reason, I thought it was on ESPN. I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah, the quote unquote Dan Villari game, the Dan Villari masterclass. I guess he gets to have his own game slash masterclass or whatever. The best honor you can have.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, I just that encompasses what I envisioned the Ohio State Northwestern viewing pleasure to be.
Yeah, like I don't think people care as much about ballpark football as we do. I mean, even thinking back to 2015, the first NBC, I guess the Shamrock series was broadcast on NBC Sports Network at Fenway Park. First game at Fenway Park since the 60s, since Jim Nantz was not the announcer Jim Nantz, but big Jim Nantz was, playing fullback for the Patriots, and they destined it to NBC Sports Network. So I would agree that it's probably destined for Peacock for a lot of the country to not see,
Yeah,
sadly.
yeah, yeah. Just
But
like what was the game? Maryland and Charlotte was on Peacock as well. Is that right? Yeah.
oh, that was on NBC. That one was actually
Was
the
that
big Saturday night game that week.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, but then I guess it's probably getting behind that. So,
Yeah, no big Saturday night, especially since it's November too. And we all know how the Big Ten feels about November night games, at least in the Midwest, because now it's a coast to coast conference. So, who
yep.
knows? We might see USC UCLA on a big Saturday night. Um, But that's pretty much all I have to discuss really in terms of this. Is there anything that you want to add or any other discussion points for Ohio State that you want to discuss, Josh? Or
No, man. You were. Like I said, I listen to your show often. You do a great job. You have some great guests. You guys are very knowledgeable. I did find it funny you guys were talking about the HBCU stuff. Was that your last week's podcast?
it was, yes.
And I'm on the show, obviously an Ohio State guy, and you guys were talking about FAMU, and there's a super obvious connection I wanted to bring up. Rudy Hubbard was the running back sat behind Woody Hay or sat behind Archie Griffin, didn't play much, graduated, was the first black coach, assistant coach in Ohio State history, running backs coach under Woody Hayes, was the head coach at Florida A&M, won the first national championship at Florida A&M, won two back-to-back Black National College football championships. I just thought I would bring that up just because I know you're a historian. You like old school football. Wasn't sure if you were aware of that. Rudy's a very cool guy. I've had the pleasure of speaking with him multiple times, and the fan youth. I think that's a very cool fact that he was able to. I don't know. I feel like he built something at FAMU, if that makes sense. So I thought that was cool. I wanted to connect the two podcasts. And I heard you mention the transfer portal as well, and I too am a little bummed. Being a smaller school guy as well, even though I do cover Ohio State football, is that I do feel like the transfer portal and the NIL starting to kill these smaller schools a little bit. So I do feel for that, even though I do cover Ohio State. I do understand the Ohio State's and Alabama and Georgia, those big schools are squashing the bug that it's the small schools, which is kind of ironic because when this whole thing turned around, what I was hearing constantly from a lot of people was that, oh, these small schools are going to have a chance. These small schools are going to have a chance. You know, if you're a kid at OU, the local car dealership is going to give you a car. Well, that ended up being kind of half true. You know, you're getting if you're the star running back in Athens, Ohio, you're getting a nice lease on a new Honda Accord, but it's not enough. You know, it's not gonna keep you there, dude. So, like, but so I do feel kind of bad about that. But you know, what are you gonna do? You can't put the toothpaste back on the tube, right?
Yeah, no, I like that phrase a lot. I like that. I like that a lot. Um, I like how you mentioned too, Florida A&M, Ohio State, like that game. I think that was like the game Kenny got in through like 6 touchdowns too. I
Oh
thought that's where
yeah,
you're going
oh
with
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I thought
No,
yeah,
no.
that's where
I
you're
would. I wanted to be positive. I wouldn't want to. I don't. You know, I don't want to bring up Kenny G destroying them. But yeah, yeah. For
But
the
yeah,
Raptors.
I didn't know that about Rudy Hubbard. So I learned something. And
Yeah, very
uh
good guy.
I guess something else I wanted to ask you just come to mind, like not even related to like our original topic on the podcast. So I mean, you being a Valpo grad and former Valpo player, I remember in 2022 the extra game out in the first weekend of December against New
Oh
Mexico
yeah.
State. I guess like as a Valpo fan, I know their fans were the 20 or so fans that I stood slash sat with in the rain that day. They
The
they were
fact
very
that there was
casual.
20 fans is impressive, dude. The fact that you found 20 fans is impressive.
I was kind of surprised too because I mean I cover the PFL. I mean I see I feel like I'm the only person in like I guess I'm not even gonna say like I guess in the red in the top 25 poll in the FCS that probably like pays much mind to the Pioneer League, but it was nice to hear them, to just see them there, and just it was a blowout. But I guess what are your thoughts like just as a Valpo football alum seeing them go toe to toe with a team that with a bowl champion and eventual bowl champion.
It's cool, man. So when I got there, and I want to be very clear, I sucked. I want to, so you know, people, not a whole lot of people. Well, some people miss me. Hey, we good? No, I want to be very clear. I was not good. But when I went, I wanted to go to Valpo because you know you kind of it's funny because on your podcast when you talk about Army, you talk about how the conference USA was the first coast to coast conference. Well, that's why I went to Valpo. I was like, man, I get to ride in a plane and go to Jacksonville and San Diego and you know. I guess it was really the Mercer, you know, a lot was really cool. Stetson, so that was one of the things that got me. And at the time, I think David Shaw was still the coach of San Diego, and Josh Johnson was kind of he was even though he didn't go to Valpo, he was used as a pretty heavy recruiting tool for every school in that conference at the time. And that was at the time of Jacksonville was pretty good as well. If you remember the Dolphins, I think they're the first PFL. I think they were actually the first Pioneer Football League school to go to the playoffs if I remember right. Um, but yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I went there. Obviously, you know, I wasn't good enough to go Cincinnati or Buffalo or any of those places. But you know, it was cool. We got beat. I was a part of that team where they made it on ESPN the not top 10 because we got beat like 80-0. I didn't know this. A former teammate of mine that I still talk to, Nathan Atkins, writes for the Bears Wire, actually told me. He said ESPN actually called to make sure that the score was right before they put it on. That's how bad we got beat. That was Jacksonville, dude. They ran the ball every play in the second half. We still got destroyed. I think they scored like, I don't know, 6 times in the second half. It was bad. So to see them actually be competitive, they when I was there, they canned that coach. Then they brought in another coach that they canned right after I left. But it seems like they really got a good foothold on things. They're turning things around. Um, so yeah, it's cool to see them develop into something that is not embarrassing. It's embarrassing that they're the Beacons now. I will say that. That was that you couldn't find a lamer nickname if you try. I will never call them the Beacons, bro. We still I you know I just it's not to be like political or anti woke or whatever they say. Beacons is just a bad name, dude. It's just a bad name. Why they went to Beacons, I don't know. But you could see it when I was in school. When I was there, the night dude that would walk around, he would have a sword and the shield. And then my sophomore, they took the sword away, so he just walked around with the shield. And I was like, it's an odd move, but okay. Kind of slow. And then they were starting to talk about changing the Crusaders thing, and I was like, oh man, all right, whatever. You know, if you want to change the name, that's cool. And then when I left, it was the Beacons, and I was like, dude, bad name, bad name. Out of all the birds of prey you could find out, what's the Louisiana Monroe's, the Warhawks and stuff. There's so many different things you could do. and the Beacons. Awful. But yeah, I mean, as the foot from the football standpoint, it's pretty cool to see them develop into something that's not embarrassing. They've had a couple guys get shots, not in the NFL, but in the indoor football league, in the UFL, and the XFL, which was something that was kind of unheard of. We had a couple guys get a couple shots, but not like this, not increased looks. I mean, these are some guys that are getting paid to go out there and train. So that's very cool. That was not the case when I was in school. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being there on that 2022, I mean, game against Mexico State, they were overmatched, of course, non-scholarship program against a an FBS school. Even though I'll give non-scholarship programs their due because in 2014, Army marched in the Yale Bowl and they did not march out with a win. That is
yeah,
something that
yeah,
that scars my it was a scar of my childhood slash I guess teenage years. Just witnessing us blow a 14-point lead in the Yale Bowl and Tyler Varga, that name just lives on. But
yeah, yeah.
but
There
seeing
were
them,
some
they
dudes. There were some dudes we played. There was a kid when I was that we there was a tight end for Butler that got a shot in the NFL. There was a defensive end for Campbell that was in the Arena Football League for like 10 years. There was some dude. I mean, we played against some dudes that got some shots. So that there's no shame in the non-scholarship game for me. That's life. Um, yeah. So it was cool with me.
yeah, for sure. I mean, and I was glad that they were able to score points that day against Mexico State, 65-3. They were able to
Yeah.
score points.
60.
Um, yeah, it
Yeah.
was it was like people started believing Diego Pavia in the quick lane bowl. I started believing Diego Pavia that day because yeah, I know it was against Valpo, but he had probably like, and I've said it I think like multiple times on the podcast, tweeted about it multiple times. It was like what I saw that day and looking back at that stat line, where it's like watching it, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. He's scoring touchdowns, but like this man went 9 for 13 for
Yeah.
320 yards and 4 touchdowns. And like looking at it after, I'm like, that is like people overuse the term video game numbers. Like that's actually video game numbers. Like so
That was
just an
before he.
interesting.
That's before he peed on the field. This is
Yes,
this is
that's the year before.
this is pre P and Pavia. This,
Yeah, pre P Pavia, but I got nothing but respect for him because he actually played in the district I played high school ball in New Mexico. So
oh
it's
really?
cool to see a guy. It's cool to see a guy like, especially too, like because his school he was at Volcano Vista. It's like on the fringes of Albuquerque, towards like more close to like Rio Rancho for all the homies back home listening know what I'm talking about. But it's cool to see him. And it's like seeing too like the type of player that he is. Like because we had a dime a dozen guys that were that were wrestlers in the off season and played ball and offense, and it's like yes, like that he plays exactly the way a District 1, 5, or 6A for one year when I was there. The District 1, 6A player who wrestles would play. Like he plays exactly like that. So it was just cool to see him getting some national cred.
So is he the most popular New Mexico State player since what Terrell Hanks?
I have to say, I think for him, I think since Larry Rose, honestly, I'll go back to say since Larry Rose, because I wish things would have worked out with Larry Rose and because I'm trying to think of like a player finally getting
Was
like that.
Was Rose before or after Hanks? He was before Hanks, right?
Was Hanks when he Tank was Hanks part of the 27 bowl team? Because I think they're at the same time. Because if you ask me
Is
like
that
to name a
right? I think
player,
you're right. Yeah, I
I
think
would have
you're
named
right.
Rose. I would have named Rose if you asked me to name
Really?
a player in the
I
Aggies,
just
because Rose
remember
is the
his
heart and soul.
giant. Well, you remember he had those he looked like an action figure with those giant weird shoulder muscles that I've only seen in the WWE. And that's all I remember from Terrell Hanks, dude. He didn't do anything in the NFL. I thought for sure I was like, God, that guy's got weird muscles. He's got to do something special.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I'd say he is. I'd say he's most popular since Rose. But yeah, like but yeah, I mean Pavia, I guess long story short, Diego Pavia, great product from I guess the 505. But yeah, I know we went way off course there, but but Josh, do you have yeah, I guess one if you want to share, I guess where we can find you on Twitter, I mean where we can read your stuff at the Buckeye Wire and anything else you want to plug.
yeah, man. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Keatley 16. Definitely check out my work at Buckeyes Wire. We have I also do a podcast with my co-host Mike Chen, who is the local recruiting expert. He hates my comparisons for all the recruits. But we do a podcast called Ohio State of Mind. So definitely check that out. We go live every Wednesday. But yeah, man, that's kind of what I've been up to. Just trying to dive in, do some scouting reports for some of these incoming freshmen, and try to get ready the next season with all the new incoming guys, and you know we'll see what they do in the portal once spring football's over too, because I'm sure they're not done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely a wide array of content I got to catch up on, honestly. It's always great for these connections, but I feel so bad because I got like a laundry list of people to support now, which I love supporting people. I love it. But, it's hard.
Dude, I feel you, man. Dude, I know how it goes. The podcasts are easy to listen to. Click it on, listen to them at work. But when it comes to like when somebody's writing and sends me something, I'm like, dude, I can't. It's hard to find time. Plus, if you're like me too, 90% of the time you're up at 10 o'clock, you got a deadline. You're like, man, what do I write about now? Oh, Damon Arnett got busted with Methodist car. That's a good article. So it's like a lot of it is just kind of like grab and go. So I feel you, but every now and again there's something substantial. Every now and again I'll crank out a good scouting report or something unique. So definitely keep your eyes out. We definitely break news and all that good stuff. And like I said, Michael does a great job too with his recruiting portion.
Absolutely. I mean, I know I'll tune into that because I've never been a great, I guess, player evaluator like on my podcast in the regular season with Jackson Danner. He's an X's and O's guy, and I'm definitely more the journalist narrative perspective guy. So it works out. It's yin and yang. But yeah, scouting reports not my strong suit. So I definitely will watch you guys and read your guys' stuff.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for having me on, dude, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully, this is not the last time. I'm sure I'll find some Buckeye topic to talk about, and it's great because now I have a Ohio State podcast for my 13-year-old brother to listen to that I can force him to listen to. So,
There you go.
thank you for that, Josh.
All right,
But
man.
yeah, but until next time, everyone. I'm the Burger Popper, and peace, love, and soul.